On this video, we're going to talk about whether or not you should get into the short-term rental game. But before I get into it, because I've done other videos about this subject, but in this one in particular, I want to mention a couple of things. I want to preface what I'm about to say with the following. I recently did a video and also did a reel, the fact that you should not take advice from someone that is not an operator. And what I mean about being an operator is if you're looking to do something, so for example, starting an Airbnb business, don't take advice from people that are not actually doing short-term rentals, and more importantly, don't take advice from someone that is not successful in the short-term rental game. You can ask someone that tried it and failed just to see why it failed. Really do your homework, okay? That's number one. And I'm mentioning that is because I had a client come up to me and send me a video that he saw on YouTube from Dave Ramsey. And in that video, someone called into the show, Dave Ramsey show, and asked if it was good for him to enter the short-term rental game because he has a property he would like to Airbnb. The problem there is that Dave Ramsey is not an expert in short-term rentals, so I would not be asking him that question. But nonetheless, he did, and this is what Dave Ramsey told him. He gave him 3 reasons why he thinks that he should not do it. Now, the 3 reasons, some have validity to it, some don't, but you need to determine whether this is going to be something that you can tolerate or not. So for example, the very first thing he told the guy was that most people that talk about short-term rentals never mention the negatives, and more importantly, don't mention the amount of work that it takes to be a short-term rental operator. That may be the case, but if you've been following my channel, you know that's not the case here. I have said it time and time again. I've said that number one, the short-term rental game or the business of short-term rentals is not passive, it's not easy, and it requires a lot of work. The second thing he tells the guy is that short-term rentals, the reason why he shouldn't do it is because as a short-term rental property, it requires a lot more maintenance than a traditional long-term rental. That, my friends, is not only from my experience is it false, but it shows how little he knows about the short-term rental industry. I can talk from both perspectives, as a long-term landlord and as a short-term rental operator. I can tell you that as a long-term landlord, you may not have to respond to as many maintenance calls as you do as a short-term rental operator does. But the difference is this: when that tenant checks out, I guarantee you, all the stuff that they didn't call you on, you're going to find and you're going to fix. For example, one of my biggest headaches, my biggest repair costs that I had when I did a turnover from a long-term tenant is paint, because they never clean the walls. Number 2 is on my bathrooms and kitchen cabinets. I would always have to repair them because if there was a leak, the tenant never told you about the leak. That leak was persistent and always damaged my cabinets. That's just 2 examples of repairs that you're going to have to do when a long-term tenant leaves. As a short-term rental property, you're in that property on a regular. Little things never become big things. And he mentioned that people that come to stay on your property don't care about your property. Not true. Long-term tenants definitely don't care about your property. And there's no recourse for you other than having to fight to keep the deposit when they leave. As a short-term rental operator, I can tell you, most people go into my properties and they respect it. But we have recourse. We can go after deposits. We can go after their credit cards and get that. We can also write reviews on them. Most guests understand that. They know that we're going to write a review on them. The chances of them coming in and destroying my property are slim to none. In addition, I have protections for my property. We have noise detectors, we have cameras, we have maximum occupancies. There's a lot of things that we do to protect the property that I cannot do as a long-term landlord. Landlord-tenant laws protect, in most cases, I'm speaking about Florida in particular, California is another place that we operate. The laws favor the tenant versus the landlord, versus when you are a short-term rental operator, it is your property. You are in command of that. and you have full control of that property, and you don't have that long-term rental. The last thing he discussed, and this is where I somewhat agree with him, but there are protections, is that he states that you should not do short-term rentals because at any point, the government can come in and change the regulations on you. That's somewhat true. Regulations can happen at any point. But if you're already doing that, and again, I can be 1000% wrong on this, but I've been operating in cities in which we had no regulations, and then regulations came in, but it didn't affect me. And number one, we get grandfathered in. Number two, they give us time to meet the regulation standards, but we can still operate. What they cannot do is flat out ban you from operating if you already were established. I'll give you an example in that, and again, only speaking about Florida, South Beach at one point banned short-term rentals, but they could not ban those that were currently operating. And there was a group of people sued South Beach, and South Beach now, once again, allows short-term rentals. Now they can regulate it, but they can't flat out ban you from operating. So that's going to conclude this video. But again, the purpose of the video is to get you to understand is be very careful who you get advice from. If you're thinking about doing short-term rentals, speak to current operators and only current operators and get those advice from them. And then you make the determination as to whether or not it's something you want to do. Love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.